Alright, everybody, it's our Klaus here, and I have a tremendous amount of information to go over with you today. I really don't have much time to do so, and I'm going to stay as concise as possible, so take notes, whatever it is you need to do to try to keep pace with this presentation today. But what I want to do is show you how Lady Gaga fits in with all of the information I've been presenting about an impending high-profile assassination in conjunction with a series of exceptionally catastrophic events designed to overturn all of the dogmas and limitations which currently define and restrict the world and existence that we experience. And so a lot to be said throughout here, but what I want to start with, I honestly never thought I'd do a video on her, but after looking into the release of her newest single, Perfect Illusion, I find that it is absolutely essential that I do this presentation. So let's start with that and take a look back here. On September 6th, she put out a tweet saying that this new single was going to come out, and so here's the cover for it here. I do want to point out the nice photoshopped fray on the bottom of her shorts there, in which you have the nice flying V, or that reference to Typhon, Apophis, the most powerful monster in mythology, and so be sure to look into that further. But this is really the same thing that we've seen on the promo shot for Del Rey's High by the Beach. Again, you have that V in the lens right here, as well as draped across with the necklace. We even saw this in the Formation music video with Beyonce in the beginning, in which she's actually on the water and giving this reference before she ultimately drowns at the end of that video. But so let's keep moving here though, because there's so much interesting information here. When we're looking at that date, September 9th, I want you to think back to the cartoon history of the universe video I did, and talking about this 666 Fifth Avenue location. And so very interesting for a number of reasons. So check this out, reference to the New Manhattan Project. Do remember that Lady Gaga was born in Upper Manhattan, so we have that reference there. But when you look at the ES values here, and be sure to read through all of this, we have this reference to the number 253, and so the 253rd day of this year happened to be September 9th, and of course that 999 reduction when we break all of that down. And so think back, because there was the whole series of things that happened that day, but one of the most important things was that North Korea did its most powerful nuclear weapons tests. And so I want you to just see those connections right there. And let's keep moving though. And so again, look back to the left side of your screen. It was announced on September 29th this year. And again, if we reduce that down, we get that 999. But that she would be headlining next year's Super Bowl halftime show. And so of course, all of the immense importance with that, but we'll talk about it more later. Let's look into a few of these more subtle details, I think, about her, alright? So I'm going to show you this article from Billboard, in which it's discussing her tattoos. You'll see as well, this was posted on the 29th, but the amount of reported tattoos is 19. And now in conjunction with everything that we'll talk about, this makes perfect sense, because remember, the 19th tarot card is the Sun card, or the Path of Resh, ultimately being what so much of all of this energy is being fed into for that purpose, alright? And so what I want you to see, the one in particular here, is the Tony Bennett Trumpet tattoo. So for those of you familiar with Gaga, you know she did the Cheek to Cheek album with Bennett, in which they revamped a bunch of old jazz songs. But look here, because Bennett, also cited as a painter, designed this trumpet for her, and we'll talk about her real name a little more later on here. But so since Tony Bennett is the one who both inspired and designed this trumpet on Lady Gaga, and of course I'm interested in this because of all of the reference to the final trumpets. I wanted to look into Bennett, and so when you do so, you see that his geometric values give us reference to concepts such as numerology, resurrecting the dead, satanic Illuminati bloodline, and the manifestation of Satan. So some very heavy-hitting concepts in there, but gets even more compounded when we look at his ES value down there, and you see that it shares the same values as Cleveland Heights. Now remember, this is where Don King gave his endorsement to Donald Trump just a couple of weeks ago, and these two bowed it off against each other in MTV's Celebrity Deathmatch. Now I highly advise you go watch that video, because I talk about why they banned my video months ago discussing that very concept. Now look behind Trump, you do see that perfectly placed ubiquitous red cloak across the crucifix back there, and of course all of these ideas of law and order that I've been discussing with Trump, everything from him saying it 4 times in his acceptance speech for the Republican nomination to that same speech being 1 hour and 15 minutes, which is the simple value for law and order, as we will discuss later. But now back to Tony Bennett and what he shares coding with. He does share with Kiss Love Gun, and so this connects with everything because we have not only the 4 members up here, the Emperor card, but we also have the 11 women down here, the Babylon card, and when we add 11 and 4, we get that nice 15, the Devil card. Of course, if we keep those separate, looking at it as 11-4 or 4-11, we could think of this in reference to 411 Elm Street, in which Kennedy was shot, or reversing it to 11-4. Remember, the 114th year of the Pilgrim Society is this year, and Beyonce's Lemonade came out on the 114th day. Now, keep going here, though, because Tony Bennett's also the same as Ricky Smiley, and so, of course, go back and watch this video. This is another banned video of mine, but talking about things well in advance before they happened. Okay, this concept of the wait is over, and again you even have this 4-time Grammy award winning, okay, all of this referential towards that 4, the Emperor, the law and order concept. But so Tony Bennett as well shares the same values as Mary Fishmas. Do remember talking about this, in which Mr. Burns, dressed as Santa Claus, douses the crowd in fish guts. Again, both of those words, 4 letters, but in particular talking about how he throws it right in Lenny's eye in the small time frame in which Lenny is able to take the patch off of his eye in this particular episode. Okay, so now all of that just very, very compelling to me, but take it a step further and see that all of this shares coding with the Antichrist as well as hieroglyphics. Again, thinking to the fact of him designing this trumpet, this potentially last trumpet, on Gaga's bicep. But you also see reference to Queen of Babylon, the Law of Thelema, Lord of the Flies, and much, much more. Okay, but so now let's get into Lady Gaga herself. Do notice that both of those names are 4 letters. There's our 44 again, and even if we're keeping this in line with our information on this 666 Fifth Avenue building, Kushner Properties, the architects, the owners for it, you do have that 44 coded in them right there. Okay, so there's a little more on the right side of the screen for you, but notice most importantly that her Jewish value is the same as Tom Doniphon. Alright, so thinking back to Liberty Valance, Tom Doniphon is played by John Wayne. In this scene here, you see him blowing a smoke screen as he's telling Rance Stoddard the truth about the night that Liberty was shot. Rance, this man over here, is racked with guilt and doesn't feel like he can move forward because he feels he's responsible, but it is revealed that with the assistance of Pompey, as you see in the shadows here, Tom Doniphon is actually the one who takes Liberty's life. Now, all of this, again, resting on this concept of law and order and education, all of these things that we've talked about immensely in the past. But I want to keep moving keep moving on this with you though, because there's so much more to be said. Even if we're just looking at this Jewish value of 441 here, it's very important because that is the length of Lana Del Rey's Salvatore song. And if we're looking at the zip code for this building over here, the 666 Fifth Avenue, it's 10103, which dropping those zeros gives us 113, which is actually the simple value itself for Salvatore. Alright, so very fascinating stuff. But keep moving here though, because with these names you do see a reference to the Magus. And now I don't have time to go into this card in depth for you today, but I will say it is exceptionally profound to see it coming up in connection with these individuals. Alright, so I want to keep going though. You have reference to forehead to be sealed, as well as MK Ultra, again the whole mind control programming that is so very prevalent in research pertaining to the entertainment industry, as well as Grand Architect, Epitome of Deceit, the plans of God, as well as Kill and Not Be Seen. I also want you to notice the golden haired one there could definitely be in reference to Trump himself. But again, that idea of killing and not being seen directly tied to Tom Doniphon here, because that is exactly the circumstance they find themselves in there. So now keep going and notice that the English and simple values for Lady Gaga here are the same as kiss, as well as bleeding and exit. And so I want to talk a lot about these values. One of the things that's interesting to me, since inversion plays such a significant role here, we have the date of October 7th coming up here, and there will be 85 days remaining from then. And so it's interesting to me because that's the inversion of Gaga's 58 down here. Now give me a minute and I'll make that even more compelling for you. Now notice for her initials here, L and G, we have the 12th and 7th letter, and so we see if we put those together we get 127, and this is the same simple value as adjustment. And this is even more interesting because Lady Gaga is 8 letters itself, and the 8th tarot card is, you guessed it, adjustment. And so take a look at all of that there, because it links back in a whole series of interesting ways. But I want to keep moving here though, because we have to talk a little bit about her soon-to-be released album. And again, here is a image of you of the adjustment card, and do note that this is an exceptionally important card. This is the complement to the Magician card, which is 0 and can be likened to the concept of karma in a lot of ways. But so take a look here for her new album Joanne, set to come out October 21st this year, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But so I want you to see this differentiation in days here. So new album is set to come out on the 21st of this month, and do remember, let's jump back here to the 5th Avenue location for you, that the 352 that we have reference to here is the date of December 17th. And so notice here, if we look at the span of time in between those two, it's 58 days, right? Just like her simple value, or 1 month and 27 days, right? 127, just like her initial values. So again, go back and watch that video to see the immense significance that I feel will be surrounding the 17th. Again, 14 days remaining, the reference to the art card and the concept of vitriol and going to the inner earth. Alright, but keep moving here. If we reduce her initials, L becomes 3, G maintains itself as 7, and so we have this 37, which is also the total of adding the first letters from each of her 4 names. Okay, again, that 4, but you can see the letter values down here added together, and we'll get down to that bit in just a minute. But of course, she has those 4 names, right? Because that is the emperor, that is law and order, and she's so heavily connected to these concepts that we find with John Wayne in Liberty Valance. But look at this. This is from her new album, and track 4 is in fact John Wayne. Alright, and just another interesting side note, in the movie Liberty Valance, he says pilgrims 22 times, that master builder number, and so much more interesting information there. But do remember that John Wayne himself also has that simple value of 115, alright? And you see Freemasons, blood work, Twitter, rest in peace, and you'll see so many more things as we go with this today. But do remember he died at that age of 72, and that was the same age that Crowley died at as well. And so, of course, an immensely important number, and I'll try to get into a spot to talk about it a little later on here. But so, let's look at this a few other ways here, because if we add the first letter values, right, the L and the G, 1 plus 2 plus 7, we get 10, which is the fortune card, or 1, which is the Magus, which makes total sense because we saw that come up in her coding there. Now, if we combine this with the number of letters in her name, remember they're both 4 letters, so 44, we get a whole series of possibilities with this. But so one of them is if we take that 10, put it in front of 44, and that gives us the same values as New World Order, as well as the wait is over. Now, let me see if I have this in here, because it has, alright, so we got this up here. We're just a little ahead. But so notice that that is what the slogan was for this flyer, with her and Ricky Smiley playing at the arena. Alright, so very important. This is also the phrase they've been using with a lot of the presidential race coverage that I've been seeing on CBSN. But so now if we look at this as a 1 and put it with the 44, it's the same values as I Want You Gaga. Now we're going to look into this later because this is what appears on her jacket in the Perfect Illusion video. But take a look there, because you have Mark of the Beast as well as that reference to 44 again. Alright, so if we then put the 1 behind the 44, we have reference to Lady Gaga, right? Just like her Jewish value here, and Tom Doniphon. And of course, reduce it down. 1 times 44 gives us 44. And so I just want you to see how incredibly critical that is, that it's so perfectly interwoven. Now, take a look here when we take it one step further and we do 10 times 44. Remember, if we keep the 0 and the 44, times them together there, it gives us this 440. Now, that's the same as Antichrist, another false flag, and conspiracies. This is also the same value as LaShawn Thomas, for those of you familiar with my Sade video. But now, keep going here. I want you to see that her full name is Stephanie Joanne Angelina Germanata, alright? And so 31 letters in there. And so again, 3 and 1 gives us that 4, just like the number of names she has. But so this number 31 is incredibly important, and this is from the adjustment card in the Book of Thoth on page 88. But talking about this, you see, more than this, she is the complete formula of the dyad. The word AL is the title of the Book of the Law, whose number is 31, the most secret of the numerical keys of that book. She represents manifestation, which may always be canceled out by equilibration of opposites. And so, let's keep going though. I wanted to get that little bit on the adjustment card in there for you so you can see how it just keeps tying back to her, alright? So now, if If we take the reductions from all of her names here, the S, J, A, and G, you see there they reduce down to 111 and 7, which we can multiply, as you see I've done here, giving us that very critical 777. Now, I've gone into extensive depth in this in the past, but do notice it's the same as the phrase order out of chaos. Now, if we take all of the letters at their full value here, again, like I just said a moment ago, it gives us the total of 37. Now, on top of everything else, I want you to know this is the same as the phrase egghead and big idea. Now, let's put this in conjunction here. It's a nice 44 for you there, but looking at the 2011 whatever it was, Grammy Awards, Music Awards that she was at, you see her in this egg, and you see that it's in Los Angeles, okay? And so that L and A is 3 and 1, okay? There's that reference again to Book of the Law. But notice she says she stayed in the egg for 72 hours, all right? That immensely important number. Again, that's the age that John Wayne died at, since we're keeping her so tied to him there. But even in this Simpsons episode that we'll talk about a little later here, you see her emerging from this egg, so on and so forth. But all of the information I presented to you in the past about this idea from Crowley's Book of Lies, the way to succeed and the way to suck eggs, is very, very important to keep in mind here. And again, I want you to take a look at these values on the right side of your screen so you can see how all of this loops so very, very interestingly, all right? And so move back to the left side of your screen now. I do just want to point out this song that she performed that night at those awards. And again, of course, they were the 53rd annual awards. And so for those of you following this channel, you already know with the 53. If you don't, I'm not going to reiterate it for you. But notice here that we have the reference to Yellowstone as well as Apocalypse Now and duality of good and evil. The ES values for the song she performed that night are the same as Tony Bennett, Cleveland High, alright? Everything that we started this video out with, okay? And so again, reference to the Antichrist. And she said in this weird interview with Time magazine that the reason that she spent all of that time in there is she really wanted to be born on stage. And so you really have to wonder, right, with that, the song title having phrase for the Antichrist, right, how she's wanting to be born onto the stage. And so take a look at her names here. You have reference to Illuminati confirmed, as well as trumpets and the magic of Kenneth Grant, as well as the phrase they killed Obama. And so I've talked about Kenneth Grant in the past here. Absolutely interesting. Notice the date that he died, January 15th. That's that 115 again, that Law and Order number. Even notice the day that he was born, the 23rd of May. That's 5-5, all right? Very, very critical to keep in mind. But so, again, a huge proponent here for Thelema, for ceremonial magicians, for the whole thing. You see here his inclusion in the Typhonian order, all right? And so, again, all of that energy I was talking about going into that deity manifested through this man here. Even look at his initials, K and G, that's 117, or that's 77. And so, of course, you can look through here. He has a whole slew of books, but this one in particular I feel is interesting because it was released 45 years to the date after Aleister Crowley died at the age of 72. And so what's interesting to me in that is he talks about describing accidents and fatalities that he believed were caused by magic, or to say that it's all interconnected for the reason, right, of it all being by design, ritualistically important for any number of reasons. And so look down below here for her first and last name here, and you have Bavarian Illuminati, as well as demon mind control and the satanic bloodline, all right? So I just noted the last half of this here, but so Crowley, who died at 72, it was in 1947. It's interesting with these 45s because it was 45 years after the Pilgrim Society was founded that Crowley died, alright? And then again, you have that book being published. It's interesting to note that if Crowley were still alive today, on December 1st this year, he would be turning 141. And so remember, in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, AF 141 is when the 9 Years' War begins. And so, of course, as I've told you in the past, in the Gregorian calendar is a 33-year difference from that and 2016, but you just again see so many very important things here. False prophet, Hairbringer of Death, Will of Thelema, and the Egg of the Aeon. Again, this concept that I've been highlighting for quite some time. But now, take a look down here for Stefani J.A. Germanata, alright, so just using her middle initials there. But you see here it gives us the same value as Claude Wagner. Now, this is interesting because he died on the 77-year anniversary of the Pilgrim Society, and he was known as the law and order judge. He had a very stern reputation for being just that. Okay, so now this gets even more interesting when you see reference to sacred wisdom as well as Obama's head blown off, major California quake, and you see 10 tens and a 7, alright? And so that gives us that 107, just like we were talking about earlier for October 7th, okay, and being the, I believe it was 281st day of the year with 50 or 85 remaining, or that 58 inverted. Remember Lady Gaga's simple value. But now look at the English and simple values here, because they are the same as Pilgrim Society, as well as the Tetragrammaton, the phrase "we made it to the top." Now remember, this is the 45 East 22nd Street condos or skyscraper that went up in Manhattan, and is due to be completed by the end of this year. But remember, that is a 777 foot tall building, alright? And you see here this reference now in the actual values to "do what thou wilt," as well as "eye above the pyramid" and "apocalypse angel of God," alright? And so what I want to do, actually, I'm going to cut this video right here, and I'm going to do the part 2, getting into the actual perfect illusion video itself. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. All of you who support this channel, whether you just watch the videos, you share them, you like them, you put them in playlists, whatever, so long as it's resonating with you, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch. And as always, please, please be well.